Okay, so what you're going to be working on today, guys, is this. Okay, chemical reactions assignment. There's 30 questions on it, but they're all like what we've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Okay, some of them are going to ask you to be able to write things in their word form. Some are going to ask you to be able to write them in their formula form. Okay, predict products, balance reactions, identify reaction types, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, now, what you need to do is pay attention to these instructions and the instructions on the sheet. Because a lot of times people lose marks on this assignment because they haven't listened. Okay? And then they fail to do the easy parts of this assignment. For example, sometimes people who don't listen miss on the second set of 10 questions that 1 mark out of 3 is for identifying the reaction type. Is that a pretty easy thing to do if you have the whole reaction? Yeah, but people miss that mark because they don't listen to the instructions, don't read the instructions on the sheet, and then don't do it. Okay? And obviously I can't give you marks for something that doesn't appear on the sheet. Okay? So I don't want you to lose marks for the easy stuff that you forget. Okay? So make little notes on this sheet as I go over. Here's the things that are important. I'm going to give you a couple little tips and hints for 1 or 2 questions on this sheet as well. Okay? Just so that you can find your way a little bit more easily. Okay, the first set of 10 questions, okay, they're given to you in formula form. Okay, you're going to get 1 mark for balancing the equation. Okay, 1 mark for doing that. So fill in those blanks. What do you put in those blanks if it's all ones? Ones. Okay, if it's already balanced, put ones in the blanks. It's a fill in the blank question. I need the blanks filled in. Okay, then you're going to write it in words. Okay, that's 2 marks. 1 mark for the reactants, 1 mark for the products. Okay, so 3 marks available for the first set of 10 questions. 1 for balancing, 2 for writing it out in words. Everybody clear on that? Okay, we don't want to miss anything. You wouldn't believe how many people just balance those equations and leave nothing else there. What are you going to get in that section if all you do is balance? Yeah, you're going to get 1 for every one of them if you balance them all right. Okay, that's 10 out of 30 marks for that section if you forget to write it out in words. So please remember to write it out in words so that you can get as many marks as possible. When writing it out in words, some things to think about. Is the question I'm doing going to need Roman numerals? All right, because sometimes that's one of the things that gets forgotten. We get naming, we forget that some things have more than one possible charge, and we don't get the Roman numerals, and then we lose marks in both. If it's a double replacement reaction, for example, we would lose the mark on both sides. Okay, you'd lose it in the products because you missed the Roman numeral in the products. You'd miss it in the reactants because you missed it in the reactants. So, okay, forgetting Roman numerals could cost you 2 out of the 3 marks. Okay, so it's not something we want to do, right? Other things. Is the one I'm working on going to need brackets? Because there's a polyatomic ion in it. Now, that's not going to apply here because, well, you don't use brackets in names, but it might apply in the second set of 10. Okay, everybody with me there? All right. Okay, so just think about those things for the first set of 10. For number 4, okay, number 4 is a bit of a tricky balance. Okay, it's a decomposition reaction, but it's not kind of like the ones we've done. Okay, because it's not breaking down into just elements. It's actually breaking this single compound down into several things. I would say, okay, in this one, I would start my balancing with nitrogen. Okay, so for number 4, for balancing, I'd start with nitrogen. Okay, you're going to need to balance that reaction element by element. Okay, another thing to be aware of, this is not a polyatomic ion. Okay, you have a polyatomic ion on your polyatomic ion chart that looks like that. Okay, but polyatomic ions don't exist by themselves. Okay, so that is a compound and must be named like a compound. Right? So in other words, that's not nitrite. Okay? Everyone got me there? That's a very common mistake that I often see on this. That's not nitrite. It's a compound and needs to be named accordingly. Okay? All right. And then a similar one here, number 7, okay, is also a bit tricky. because you have a similar thing happening here. Okay, your NH4 here is actually splitting up, okay, into different places. And I would say, again, the thing to start balancing with in that reaction is nitrogen. All right. For the second set of 10 questions, okay, marks are different now. Now the reactions are given to you in words, so you need to write them in formula form. Okay, so you're going to get, okay, 1 mark for identifying the reaction type. Please remember to do that. That's the easiest mark in this set of 10 questions, okay, is identifying the reaction type. Okay, write it in words. Okay, you're going to get 1 mark for that, writing it out in words. And you're going to get 1 mark for balancing it. Sorry, not writing it in words. Sorry, writing out the reaction. It's already written in words. Okay, you're going to get 1 mark for writing out the reaction in formula form. Okay, so essentially, you have to get all the compounds right in the reaction to get that mark. Okay, is everyone following me on that one? Now, here's the problem. You're also getting a mark for balancing the reaction. If you don't do the formulas right, will you get the balancing mark? Okay, so you got to be mindful of that. Remember to do things like, okay, swap and drop your ionic compounds, and remember special elements. That's the one that gets people in that second set of 10, is forgetting that certain elements are special and not writing their little number. So if you don't write that little number beside oxygen, okay, you're not going to get the balancing numbers right either. Okay, you guys follow me on that? So, I mean, and that's things that obviously is just a matter of I didn't look at my periodic table and I forgot. Okay, so make sure you look at your periodic table if you got elements by themselves. Check for specials. Okay, and then for the last set of 10, you're predicting. So for these, don't write them in words. You'll notice there's not very much space between the questions. That's because there's not enough space for you to write them. Okay, I don't want you writing them out in words. You're just predicting the products and balancing the reaction. All right, so you're going to get 2 marks for your products. Right, because most of these have 2 products. Okay, most of them. Okay, so you're going to get 2 marks for the products, and then your 3rd mark is for balancing the equation correctly. Okay, any questions on that? All right, you got the rest of the class to work on it. Okay, the more focused you are, the less homework you're going to have. Okay, we talked about this rule yesterday, but people are over-applying it right now. The rule was when you're predicting a chemical reaction, and on the reactant side, you've got a metal like, let's say, copper that has more than one possible charge, and it's by itself, you have no way to figure out what its charge is, right? And so we said you pick the first one, okay? But that only applies when you have to figure out what the products are. In a reaction like number 1, do you have to figure out what the products are? No, you don't. They're given to you. So can you figure out what copper's charge is here? Okay, so in that case, you don't need to apply that rule we talked about. That rule only applies when you're predicting products and you have no way to figure out what copper's charge is. Here, you're told what it's with, you're told the ratio they're in, so you can figure out what its charge is and apply the right Roman numeral. Okay, you guys follow me there? So that rule we talked about yesterday only applies when you have to predict. Okay, guys, another good question just came up. If you see water written in any of its various forms on the assignment, is it okay to name it water? The answer is yes. Okay, I mean, if you see H2O, we all know what that is. We see HOH, we all know what that is. Just, yeah, okay, just name it water. That's its name. It would prefer that you call it that. Okay. Okay. Been watching you guys work. You've been doing a pretty good job here. I'm going to make the due date for this after the exam. Okay, so March 18th. That's a ways away. But again, don't wait till March 17th to do this. Doing this assignment is a good way to prepare for your unit exam, so you can make it kind of part of your studying and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, kind of an idea. Okay. Be aware, guys, that that means though you won't ever get the corrected copy back in time to use it to study for your exam. Okay, so that's kind of the downfall of having it after the exam. But I think you got enough work to do next week. Okay, you got 2 things coming due and a unit exam to study for, so we won't put the pressure on to have this one done too. Okay, so it's not due till the 18th, but make sure you get it done. Okay, I'll be taking those hopefully with me. Okay, to basketball provincials with the senior team. Hopefully, we'll be going, and I'll have to mark them in Fort McMurray. Okay, yeah, gotta have something to do up there. All right. So yeah, make sure you have them done for that day, because if you hand it in late, well, I won't be here to take it. Yeah. All right.